So there we were, shivering, wet, miserable, and in the middle of nowhere. As the rain grew stronger and the sky got darker, it became clear that the camping trip that we'd been looking forward to all summer was not only dead on arrival, but was going to be replaced by a 2-day suck fest where we were going to have to just grin and bear it. And today, I love camping in the rain. So what changed? Well, I failed forward. And in this video, we're covering how failure leads to growth. Welcome to Falling to Systems, a channel dedicated to the idea that with time and consistency, we're all capable of transforming into who we admire today. My goal is to encourage you to aim high and to make success inevitable. So transforming ourselves into who we admire often requires us to develop mastery over some kind of skill or behavior. Counterintuitively, however, the path to mastery is less about perfection and much more about repetition. You see, you have to start with something in order to improve it. Put another way, you have to have a baseline of performance before you can refine it. Quality and mastery come through a continuous stream of tiny refinements that stack and compound on each other over time. When COVID hit, my wife and I made a concerted effort to learn how to camp because it was one of the few activities that we could actually do safely in those days. Friends of ours had taken us camping a few times over the prior years, and we always had fun. We were both real newbies though, and we had a lot to learn and had to start from scratch. We bought the absolute basics in terms of gear: a tent, some chairs, a camping stove, and we just booked a bunch of trips. Looking back, those first few outings were tragic. One time I forgot to pack utensils, so we had to eat with our hands at every meal. Another time I completely forgot to bring firewood, and we had to build our tent in the dark after arriving late. Each trip that we took, though, seemed to bring some small lesson to learn, and each of those little lessons went into the preparation for the following trip. By the time we had gone on 5 or 6 of these trips, I'd say we had graduated from total and complete noobs to somewhat competent campers, and this highlights an important idea. Anytime you decide to develop skills in a new area, you should anticipate that there will be a certain amount of failure that acts as almost like a toll that has to be paid on the path to mastery. Now, adding utensils and firewood to my camping checklist are pretty good examples of how each of these mistakes kind of contributed to my camping intuition. These mistakes are also finite. I only had to learn each of those lessons once to improve. And while not every lesson can be learned the first time life decides to teach it to us, it's still true that there are a fixed number of times that we'll need to fail before a lesson finally sticks. Seeing and expecting failure kind of reframes the journey. Even though the amount of fail is unknown, at least it's limited. There's a set number of mistakes you're going to have to make before you get good, and the sooner you make them, the better. Whether you're learning a new language, developing a work-related skill, or exploring a new facet of a hobby, I highly encourage that you not only anticipate some failure, but even go so far as to actively seek it out. Now, I know that can sound a little strange, actively looking for ways to fail and all, but this points us to our next key idea, that learning is proportional to struggle. Back to the story at the top of the video, despite having completed several successful camping trips and feeling pretty good about my camping abilities, being totally miserable during that downpour gave me a humbling reminder that I had never really learned how to work with tarps or any kind of rain protection during camping. And until then, I had only ever camped on clear and sunny days. Now, unlike forgetting cutlery or having to set up a tent in the dark, being unprepared for rain wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was a total fail that resulted in a lot of struggle and a lot of frustration over a 2-day period. And that trip left an impression. It motivated me to level up my capabilities in a big way. So coming out of that experience, I resolved to learn how to camp in the rain. And the weather here in the Southeast can be unpredictable, so I knew it was only a matter of time before I encountered this new foe, rain, again. I dove deep into bushcrafting YouTube, and I taught myself how to tie basic survival knots and how to make emergency shelters. While I was at it, I also learned how to make a fire in the rain. And then I went and bought tarps and went to the REI and bought cordage and spent like several afternoons going into the backyard and just practicing my skills. Months later, we found ourselves getting caught out in the rain again, but this time the experience was actually like wonderful. There just came a point where we were sitting perfectly comfortable, in a rainy environment around a warm fire as we listened to the rhythm of the rain bouncing off the tarps overhead. And just taking in that like uniquely fresh air that only comes from wet earth. And just in that moment, I was filled with this tremendous sense of accomplishment. Like I had really earned that moment. And so the 3 key ideas we covered here are all connected. When you set out on a path to mastery in a given area, lean into the fact that repetition and not perfection is how you'll establish a baseline that can be refined. And as you put in the reps, expect that there's a fixed amount of failure that you're going to have to experience before you get it. And then finally, embrace the big fails when they come, because that's where the fastest and deepest learning happens. Now, do you have a story to share about mastery and failure? If so, I'd love to hear about it. Please comment below and let me know what you are working towards and if any of the ideas here came into play at all. Leaning into your fails gives you a massive leg up in developing mastery, but how do you know when failure begins to compromise consistency? Be sure to check out this video here to find out. That's all for now. Thanks for visiting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.